Semester being over, I'm back to trying to become a master, playing with the intent of learning and improving. And here's one of my first games I play with a 92% accuracy, or 91.8 to be exact. I go d4, they go knight to f6, pawn to c4, pawn to g6, and knight here to c3, all book moves. They go d5, I go e3, bishop to g7, I take the pawn, they take, and g3 was the first move that wasn't booked. Now the funny thing, I actually don't know the theory on this, so now I do that, I'm going over it. I just kind of played this from playing it for so much. It says I played 26 times in the grunfield, so it may be like, oh, I didn't play it that much. But this opening, like in general, this is the Queen's Gambit, so I played this quite a lot, and I'm just going basic theory principles here. Now, I try to play the Catalan. I don't know the theory all the way, mostly because I don't know what to do if they do take the pawn. So I generally take it. So I need to like read up and like learn on what I should do in the Catalan, which I will do since I have the time now. But after they take, as I mentioned, I go g3, which isn't the best move. Knight to f3 was better, although because I mentioned I'm trying to play the Catalan, I did want to follow the idea of fianchettoing the light square bishop. They castle, I have fianchetto as I mentioned, which just makes the most sense. You don't want to leave that hold there for a necessary amount of time, although you wouldn't really lose if you went knight to f3. It's just not a needed move. Not needed to not make it. But they take the knight, I take back with the c-pawn, this is the only piece they can recapture, and they go pawn here to c5. I go knight to f3, they go bishop, and this knight c2 is the best move here. I'll say it does make more sense, honestly. When I was playing the game, I didn't notice it, but the problem I have playing knight f3 is like, well, if I go there, they can go bishop g4. I didn't like it, but looking at knight e2, now I can go f3 following that. So the computer, that makes a whole lot of sense, and I will note that for next time. But I go knight f3, as I mentioned, they go bishop g4, I castle. Now I consider going h3, but to me, it felt unnecessary, because if they do take the knight, I get the bishop here for pretty much no work at all. Like usually, or I would say usually, in general, when you're getting the bishop here, you're forcing them to take it off the board. But here they're letting me do it naturally. So I'm like, well, let me just get my king safe. So I castle. They go knight here. I go pawn to h3, and they take the knight, which I kind of figured they'd do. So I pre-move, taking back with the bishop. I thought for a quick second if taking with the queen was better, but I decided the bishop, well, when it was their turn, I thought for a quick second if taking with the queen was better. But I just couldn't convince myself it was, just because the pawn here has been attacked so many times, it must be better to take with the bishop, and I was right. Then making an accuracy, taking the pawn on d4. I take back with the c-pawn. Now, the reason the d-pawn doesn't work, in my opinion, now obviously, I'm not 100% sure, but I consider taking with the the e-pawn does not work taking back. The c-pawn makes more sense. Now, if you took with the e-pawn, the problem, in my mind, is one, you have a backwards pawn on c3. So that's the first issue. Two, taking with the c-pawn creates a pawn chain, which is like a plus, and there's a negative in the other move. But the third reason is that there's just so much pressure on this diagonal. You actually want to loosen it up a little bit more, if that makes sense. So if you took with the d-pawn, there's still potential for down the line for that to be something on the diagonal. But when I take with the c-pawn and they go here, I can loosen up the diagonal, get my rook off it. So the first thing I do is I take, oh, this is a miss. I take, I'm still winning, but my thought process for doing this move is I can just go rook to b1 following, as you'll see. Because now I go rook b1. Now I could have taken, and I saw take, but I just overthought it. I saw bishop x b7, and then, what would it be? Could it be knight to f3 check? Was I looking at? No, that's wrong. No. Well, I just missed that. I could just take. I take the pawn eventually, I think, anyways. They take, I take, they go here, or I don't. Wow, that's a pretty big miss. I saw the move, which is the part that sucks. Maybe I think bishop. Oh no, I know what I was saying. It was bishop capture b7, rook b8, and then I didn't know what to do from there. Let's show the moves because I want to see why that works. No. Let's show. Sorry. Okay, here. So the best move is this, and let's show the moves from here. Oh, okay. I'm supposed to queen trade after. Okay. So see, I missed that nuance in it. I was just seeing the rook over. So I was right. If I didn't queen trade, I'd be losing. But it's the fact that I missed the queen trade, which is why I didn't. Okay. That sucks, but I see what I missed now. But we do queen trade. They go pawn here to b6, and I go bishop to a3, attacking their rook, and now bishop back to b2. Now this is a move I wasn't really I didn't know what to do. And I was like, well, let me just get the knight off the board. Now I've talked about the bishop pair, but here, my dark square bishop is not the strongest, and then their knight is controlling some important squares on d3 and f3. So I decided to get rid of it Move my bishop here to b3 to protect the pawn on a2. And although I lost the bishop here, I have a better position than I did before, as my archbishop was kind of weak. I had a weak pawn on a2, and I couldn't control any of the squares that were important squares on the third rank. So I feel like that was a good, that reason that trade worked. They go rook over, and because my bishop controls the d1 square, I can stop them from doubling up on the second rank by going rook to d1. Now, not the best move, but it's the second best, so I won't be too critical of that. And I trade down. You may be wondering, how do I win this game of 5 pawns versus 5 pawns and a bishop and opposite color bishops as well? So first I go king here. I go king to f1, which I didn't even consider h4, honestly. I was choosing between king g2 and king f1, and I chose king f1. We both picked the best moves here, or second best or best, and they blunder with pawn to a5, and I take. Now usually opposite color bishops are a draw, even if you're down a pawn. The issue of this, the way they're down the pawn here, is one, my king, I have a complete pass pawn on e4. Now usually it would be something, if I had a pawn on b3 and they had a pawn, one of their pawns on the f square or the e square, I think that's a draw. But because I have the e pawn completely passed, it's a win. So I push, and I go pawn here to g4, which is a mistake. Now I actually didn't know how to win here. Well, I feel I'm misspeaking. I knew how to win the game, but I know the best way. So I went g4, which I wasn't even sure if it made sense. My thought process was, if I go pawn here to e5, I can't push f5 immediately. So say I go e5, bishop out the way. That f5 square is now kind of weak. And if they go bishop to e7, I can't like push through the bishop. So it kind of felt unnecessary. Maybe it was I go there and then g4, because I think I have to have a pawn. Obviously, I have to have a pawn to push f5, or else I'll just drop it for free. But I do it in the wrong order, it would seem. But they messed up themselves. I push here first, and now I push to f5 as I mentioned, because I want to have these pawns together to promote. Not promote both of them, but they need to be together to attack the bishop. I go pawn here to f6. They go back, pawn here to e6, king here, and then pawn here to e7. They sacrifice the bishop for 2 pawns, but it doesn't really matter, as I attack, and then king here. They go for this tactic, b3 I take, and then a3, and I respect it. Now, it doesn't really matter. I have to find the best move, king c3, or maybe I don't even have, yeah, I think I have to find king c3, because if I go b4, a2, I was looking at the bishop control on the a2 square, but it wouldn't matter. King c3 is like the only move here, and that it makes sense to play something like that. Maybe I miss it, especially in low time pressure, as you could imagine in the end game. We're both low on time, but they go king f6, pawn up, and now it's just game over. I go to promote. I consider trying to protect it, but I'm like, it doesn't really matter, as I promote the pawn here. I go queen back, and they resign, as there's just no way they can win the game. Although they have 3 pawns, I have a queen and a bishop. It's just unwinnable. But yeah, that's how I got that win. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and have a good one.